Hey guys, it's Chris, a retired fiber splicer. In this video, the second video in this playlist series, we're going to talk about cables, proper cable routing in the construction and building of these splice cases. Because before we get into reading prints and learning fiber counts and all that kind of stuff, let's just keep it real. Before I knew any of that stuff, my employers had me in the field building cans, just straight splicing stuff or prepping stuff. They'd have me out there dropping tails, taping them down, prepping the can, or if it was just a 24 or 24 butt splice, they'd have me straight splicing, color for color. So let's talk a little bit about the correct way to deal with these cables in various situations that we run into in the field. All right, guys, so in an aerial situation, we pull up to the pole, we either hook it with our ladder, we get in the bucket, we go up, whatever we do, we gaff, we get these cables and we're dropping them down, right? And we're new. We really have no idea how to route these cables correctly. So what we don't want to do is cross the pole up. And what I mean by that is if they ever need to remove that telephone pole, say it breaks, someone runs into it with a truck and breaks it in half, the wind blows it over, something like that. We want to be able to remove all the cables from that pole and replace the pole. So more often than not, when you get to this location, you're going to notice that there's pre-existing cables already running. More than likely, there's copper lines running. There's already stuff on this pole. And you'll notice that every one of those cables, well, they should be anyway. I'm not going to say every time, but because sometimes someone's already crossed it up. Our linemen get paid by the unit. They don't get paid to dress our cables for us. They already have a hard enough job pulling these cables and lashing them up. So they're going to leave them on all three sides. Let's say we've got a tap coming off of our main line here. Here's our CO side, here's our field side, here's our tap. What we don't want to do is bring this cable around the front side of this pole and this cable around the back side of this pole. And then this one around to meet this one. You see what I'm saying? We want to make sure we keep all three of these cables on the same side of the pole. Whatever side of the pole that the pre-existing cables are already on. Because more than likely when they go and inspect this job after you've got it built and tested, they're going to see that you've crossed that pole. You're going to have to drop that case, cut your tape, cut the cable out, route it the correct way around the pole so it's not crossing the pole up, and then re-splice it. So every time we have to re-enter or return to a location that we've already built and dressed out, we're losing money and we're losing credibility. So you always want to make sure you take all these cables around the same side of the pole before you tape them down. Now let's talk about a hand hole. When the buried crews run these cables in, one's going to be coming from this way, one's going to be coming from this way, maybe one from each other direction. Now, if they're all four dead ends, it's not that big of a deal if there's nothing already in this hole. You just run them all four out, dress them around, tape them to where they'll lay in nice and neat, and that's just all there is to it. But if it's a mid-entry, or if there's an existing cable already in this hole, or a splice case already in this hole, what you do not want to do is allow your new cable to come up through the center of this existing loop. Because now you've just created a knot. If you bring this cable, one of your new cable ends up through the center, underneath this on the ground, and through the center and up, and then say this one's already laying over here, you can just grab it and pull it up out and you tape them together and splice it. Now you've created a situation where there's nothing you can do with this existing loop unless you cut it in half to untangle what you've just went through the center and around the outside of. You see what I'm saying? You always want to make sure that you take your new cables or any cables outside of a looped situation, if it's not a cut end, around to the outside of the loop, and then pull them up out of your hole and tape them and dress them around. Same thing goes for manholes. Let's say here's our vault where the manhole goes into the ground, right? And do not use the existing copper enclosures as a ladder. They are controlled with air. That is how they prevent leaks, and they monitor the air pressure. They will know who's in the field working. They will see the gauges at the office of the air pressure. If it starts leaking, they're going to know who is out there working, and it is a nightmare to fix those old air field to prevent leaks cables, them big old copper cables. You can almost lose a company over something like that. All right, our conduits with the cables probably are about this high in this hole to prevent the water getting in it. God forbid it was to fill up that high. There's gonna be existing cans in this hole. There's gonna be cables already running around in this manhole. So you have to imagine that you're looking at it from this kind of perspective. All right, this is looking straight down in the manhole. There's already cables that are dressed this way. Now, if you bring in a new cable over here out of this conduit, and you bring it up underneath, if you bring it underneath and up through the center, but this cable, the new cable that comes in, you go above and around, but this one went through, you just created a knot. You just sealed yourself in the future when there's traffic on this cable. The only way you're gonna untangle it is to cut it. So you want to always make sure that you go to the outside of all. Either go underneath. You do not come up through the center. Whichever way you take this cable or this one, they all need to go the same way around the outside. Or if you just happen to take them all three through the center, then you can undo it. It's not tangled, but you can't take one around the other way than the other. You feel me? Like I said, the inspectors will have you in there redoing. And just let me re-emphasize this, guys. It is critical that when you open that lid off that manhole and you get it out of the way, you look down in there. If there's not a ladder already down in there, or a built into the side in the concrete like rebar type ladder to get down in there, do not use those big silver preformed copper splice enclosures as a set of stairs, because I have seen guys put their foot on one thinking that it's going to be secured on those shelves that they put in there, bro, but the concrete's rotted out. The anchors that they put in there, I mean, erosion, they probably wasn't put in there good back in the day anyway. Can you think how big of a pain in the butt it would be to have to anchor one of them things? So I can imagine not doing a very good job on several of those anchors over the period of 25 years down there with that water, bro. That stuff gets weak and it will create an air leak and you will screw yourself, well, or your company. So grab an extension ladder and slide it down in the hole. If your little safety gate doesn't have a ladder set up with it, that's what mine had. I had a safety gate around the manhole that came with a big ladder that hooked. But that's just some tips and tricks and OSP fiber that you got to watch out for. Don't be crossing your cables up. Don't cross the pole. Don't go up through the center of an existing loop in a manhole or a handhole and around the outside and create a tangle, because as soon as you do, the situation will arise where you got to do something about it, and you're going to just put yourself in a real bad position. So pay attention, measure twice, cut once type thing. You feel me? All right, stay tuned for the next video in this playlist series.